We welcome back former Baltimore teacher, current travel hacker, and now full-time financial planner, Justin Garritt. Justin, how are you?
Oh man, I'm fantastic. I'm so excited to be back with you guys. I think this is like round three or four together. This is great.
Yes, we share that sentiment with you. This is our third episode, and we will link to the previous two. Yeah, we're excited to catch up with you. Let's start off with some big life changes you've made. We're going to get to student loans. That'll be the focus of this episode. But you recently got married. Tell us about that.
Yeah, I did. My wife and I did a really unique way of getting married. About a year and a half ago, 2 years ago, I proposed, and then we did an engagement party that was kind of like the wedding that everybody's used to seeing. All of our friends and family were there, the dance, the DJs, and all that stuff. And we did it in a really casual way in our hometown in upstate New York. And so we told everybody that, hey, this was our chance. This was your chance and our chance to celebrate as a group because we weren't going to do a normal formal wedding on the back end. And then my wife's family are from Colombia, so we ended up going down there since they couldn't come to us. We ended up going down there and doing like a small ceremony and dinner in Cartagena, and we stayed there for 5 or 6 days with the family. And it was our way of for them getting an opportunity to celebrate our relationship with them, which I think meant a lot to them. And then we officially got married in February of this year, so 2022, on a beach at 8 o'clock in the morning when the sun was coming up. And yeah, in Florida this year. It was lovely. It was beautiful. And we're so happy the way we did that. It was like three weddings in one that probably cost the lesser or equal to just one wedding. So we loved it.
Well, I know in recalling the last podcast we did with you, you described this party. I think it was about to happen, this first
Yeah.
event, I guess, of the three wedding events. And I remember being so impressed with how simple and outside the box it was. And then to hear these two other parts again, I admire you for a lot of reasons, Justin, but I love that you're rethinking things. I feel like it's very
Mm.
easy to fall into what I call the wedding industrial complex, where you have to go about it in a certain way. It's enormously expensive. It's I think too scripted. I think this is a really cool way to do it.
Yeah, I think looking back on it, I've asked my wife this numerous times, and she said that first one was one of the best nights of her life. And we did it in such a unique, beautiful way. The room was full of love, and we just didn't have all the pomp and circumstance that we didn't think was needed. And so that's right for a lot of people, but for us, it wasn't. And she's never been the person that kind of dreamed of her wedding since she was little, like I think a lot of people. And so this just worked out well. Like, what's the most important parts of the wedding? Let's cut everything else out and let's make sure the things that we care most about we just blow up and have a good time. And honestly, that's our pretty much our position on life too, right?
Yeah.
Let's throw out the norms that are nonsense and let's focus on the things that bring us the most value. So
Oh, cut to the heart of it. I love it, Justin. I learn from you every time we speak. So,
uh,
all right, before we get into your transition, let's talk about your previous career. How long did you teach? What did you teach? And why the transition?
Sure. Yeah. So I joined Teach for America back in 2011 after graduating from a school in Vermont with a teaching degree. I came down here because Teach for America doesn't really give you many options. They pretty much say, hey, this is where you are going to teach if you want to. And actually felt like I won the lottery because it had John Hopkins as a master's and an admin program that I did my first 3 years while teaching. And I fell in love with this city that I think sometimes gets a bad rep. And I've been here now ever since. So I taught 11 years. One of those years was a sabbatical. And I ended up transitioning to financial planner back in 2017, 18 during my sabbatical. I took some time to rethink what I wanted to do. I realized that I craved a little bit more flexibility, I think, than the teaching job allowed me. And I started getting really, really into helping people with personal finance. Took the CFP coursework during my year off. And then when I came back, I started helping people and more or less putting on some just information sessions at school, fell in love with it more. And then I dreamed of the firm I wanted to run to be able to support teachers and other service members. And then in 2019, I launched the firm. I did both jobs for 3 years.
Wow.
And it was a lot. And once I got to a tipping point in 2020, so this was about a year ago from the school year, I decided to transition full time into the financial planning role. And a lot of things I miss about teaching, but there's also I do like my new life now.
Yeah, I feel like in some ways our stories are similar. I taught for about 12 years, really loved teaching, found it so enjoyable, and gradually transitioned to doing 403(b)(y)s full time. And I do love the flexibility. We never want to encourage or have really good teachers leave the classroom. But as we say all the time, Scott and I say this, we need the right kind of financial planners servicing this market. And to have someone like you with your ethics, with your teaching background, with the way you go about it, I think this is a net win for teachers.
Thanks, Dan. Appreciate that.
And are you primarily working with teachers?
Yeah, so I work probably 60% of my clients are teachers or administrators or somebody who works in the school system. I probably have another 20% that are nurses, travel nurses, local nurses in the area. And then the other 20% could be a lot of young professionals, firefighters, police officers that are kind of spread out among industry. But most clients I serve are between 25 and 50, 25 and 40, who are experiencing all of the crazy stuff that young people experience. And truthfully, there's not a lot of people out there supporting these folks because they don't have any assets, and you're not going to become rich working with those clients. But I love being a part of life transitions. I love being the first call when when a couple's pregnant. I love to be the first call when someone just got engaged and they want to bring their partner into the mix and get them all caught up to speed on their finances. So I think I found what I'm supposed to be doing right now.
I think that's pretty obvious you have. Not only are teachers underserved, I think younger people are underserved. So for you to fill these two niches is just superb. So teaching financial planning, what skills from teaching have you found to be transferable to this new career?
Wow, that's such a great question. I would say it's unbelievable how much practice that I've gotten with creating lesson plans and being able to think like a week ahead with folks and also doing a long-term type plan. So I think the planning situation of like when I'm meeting with a client is almost the same thing where we're looking at, okay, where do we want to be at the end of the year or 5 years from now and then how do we break that down and more or less create a scope and sequence and be able to deliver on every month that I meet with clients, how are we delivering towards that promise of their goal? And so I think the planning strategy is a lot of the same. And then also very similar to teaching, there's an art and a science to both these jobs. You've got the science of Roth IRA contribution deadlines and student loan details and all that, similar to teaching, where you've got your pedagogy you have to teach. But then outside of that, you've got all of the soft skills and all the art of how do you get students or how do you get clients to realize their goal and be a champion for them on helping, plant the seeds to be able to reach that, and how to be their motivational person, their cheerleader, and experience the ups and downs of life with them. So it's a lot of the same kind of artistic soft skills that are transferable. And then another thing is I would do anything for my students. I mean, I'll go to their baseball games. I took them to Hamilton when they were here. If there was a death, I'd go to their funerals. And I want to be that same person for my clients. And so, if they have COVID, I'm going to offer them to bring them food at their house. And if they just went through a death in the family, I want to be right with them and support them through the stuff. So just like the same type of mentality of just, I'll do anything to be able to support you because that's my role. And I think that attitude is very similar. And I think it's very transferable.
This is why, Scott, we talk about this all the time. We love teachers. They're so intelligent. They're so hardworking. They're so organized. They're so compassionate. And I think sometimes teachers undersell the unique skill set that they bring to that profession. And again, we're not trying to encourage people to leave the classroom, but so many of the things that make someone a really good teacher, I think, are transferable to so many jobs. Okay, now I have to ask you, because I think about this often, particularly in September. What do you miss most about the classroom?
Yeah, I was on a podcast the other day and they asked me that question, the Fit podcast, and I think the biggest thing I miss is being extra silly that I can be with middle schoolers, right? The 4th to 8th graders, they just like loved my crazy 7:30 energy self when I dress up in the morning, sing and dance, scream and yell around just to pump everybody up in the morning. if I did that, at 8 a.m. with my first call this morning, they would have looked at me cross-eyed. But students, they might give you the weird look, but they love that energy, and I miss being that version of myself. And I hope, of course, I hope to bring that back when I have kids someday. But I do miss that. And then there really is nothing like the field trip experiences that you take kids on at the end of the year, the relationships that you're building from beginning to end, and watch the change in how they believe themselves. I don't know. There's a lot of that soft skill stuff that I'm going to certainly miss. But one thing I will not miss, though, is I was starting to not love teaching math anymore. I just wasn't seeing as much real. I don't know. I was starting to be not excited to come in and teach math. If it was straight finances the whole time, I think I would have continued to feel really stimulated. But I did financial planning with clients like once a month on Fridays, and that was awesome. But if I was just getting bored of the content after 11 years, and so I was ready to make a change from there. I wasn't super pumped to come in and teach that content anymore.
Hey, I think it makes sense to listen to that voice in your head and consider other career options, because it's probably not fair to yourself, definitely not fair to yourself. And it's probably not fair to your students if you've lost that enthusiasm. Do you miss the bureaucracy?
I was really lucky to
I mean,
have.
don't miss the bureaucracy is probably a better way to say it.
I will say I love my ability now to think a lot more outside the box. I think in teaching, a lot of times they give you a box you've got to stay in. So I don't miss that. I was really blessed that I had really great administrators, though, that did that shielded us from that, especially my last one. So yeah, there's some things I miss around just being boxed in versus not. There's a lot of also things with teaching, that things like checklist things you have to do. Like a lot of times the lesson plan, the formatting of it, and the once or twice your observations and all the things you have to do for that. It's just a lot of check the box things that don't bring value to people. One thing with my new boss is I only do things that are going to accelerate my clients' growth. It's going to make my process more efficient and me to help more people. And if it doesn't meet those criteria, I delegate it out or I don't do it. In teaching, there is just a lot of nonsense that you sometimes get stuck having to do that I don't miss. Yeah.
No, I don't miss that either. I mean, I always said it's probably unrealistic. I just wish the administration would come to my classroom all the time. But when you do 2 set observation periods, the students know it's an irregular event. They feel weird. The whole thing can be weird. It doesn't feel authentic, is how I recall.
Yeah, absolutely. One also thing I've really loved transferring over is that I meet with a lot of other financial planners who meet with 2 or 3 clients a day. And for me, because of the teaching skill set, I have a really unique ability. I think most teachers do. I'll meet with somebody for this hour and 15 minutes, and then I have quickly the ability to switch over, no matter what that meeting was like, no matter how great it went or maybe not great it went, or what I learned about them. Immediately I can switch my restart, next class is coming in, next hour and a half on, no matter what just occurred. And I can do that over and over and over and over again. I can do 12 meetings in a day, and no client would ever feel like they're not getting 100% of Justin, even at 10 p.m. with a West Coast client or 7 in the morning with an East Coast client. And I do think that comes from teaching, that not, I just run right through, and it's awesome.
As soon as you said that, it reminded me of parent conferences. I can remember doing a dozen a day, where it's just like, boom, 2 parents are waiting outside the classroom. You go through, boom, 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 boom. Yeah. No,
But
again,
that mind shift is what's key, right? Like you have to be able to restart. Like the next class deserves me. My next client deserves me at 100%, no matter what just occurred. And a lot of people don't have that skill set, and teachers mostly do.
I totally agree. Well, I just have one last question for you. Obviously,
Yeah,
your finances now have changed, because I believe
yeah.
you had a pension. I'm pretty sure you had a 457B and a 403B. I'm guessing you don't contribute to either of those now, because obviously you can't. And also, what kind of retirement plan do you have now?
Another great question, Dan. There's a lot of great things about teaching with financial wise, right? Access to 403B, 457 if they're low cost. That 457 account is unbelievable that you can access it. Like right now, I could access it if I want. Now that I left service, and I don't have access to that anymore, for sure. Roth IRAs won't change at all, so that will stay the same. The pension was a huge decision for me. In Baltimore, in Maryland, you have 3 options with your pension. You can leave it where it is, and it will gain 5% per year guaranteed over time. So you could do that. You could leave it there and pull it out. You can leave it there, and then at 65 for me, I can qualify for a monthly contribution, which would be really, really low because I've only, did 11 years. Or the last option is to do a rollover. And so I debated back and forth, and Scott and I talked a lot about this for about a year of like, what is the best decision? And I did decide that I rolled it over. So I just moved it over either to an IRA or to my Vanguard 403B that I have. And I would prefer to invest for that extra growth. I mean, basically you're comparing, do I want the guaranteed 5% or do I want the ability to be in the 8, 9, 11% average growth if I'm all equities? And I realized that between now and 65, I think I was leaving a lot of money on the table, and I'm fine with risk. And so it made sense for me to roll it over. But that's a hard decision I work with a lot of clients on, is like, what happens between when they're vested and when the pension doesn't necessarily make sense? It's usually between year 10 and year 20. It's like, man, what happens here? And I'm sure there's a million people listening right now that are in that same situation. And it's so unique based on the state, based on your risk tolerance, and based on what's going on in your life of what is best for you there. And so now I have a solo 401k right now that I contribute to. So that replaces more or less like my 403b. And the one advantage is that not only can I contribute as an employee, as Justin, I can also contribute as like a match as Garritt Financial Solution, putting a part of my profits in there. And so that's one advantage versus what that I didn't have teaching, is now I have the opportunity to more or less pay myself a match into the solo 401k. And then another big thing is my job is a lot less constant as far as income coming in. And so I had to be a lot more strategic around keeping more money in an emergency fund. Luckily, they're earning good yield right now, but either way, I keep about 3 to 4 times more than what I did as a teacher now, knowing that I don't want to worry about ups and downs and rainy days with the business. I want to make sure that me and my family are set. So when I was teaching, I kept a lot smaller emergency fund.
Well, again, you just pointed out another reason we encourage people to consider a 457B, because it gives you this kind of flexibility. Sounds like you haven't tapped it, but how nice to know that, an event's occurred that allows you to access it if you need to. And I also had a similar question when I left teaching, very similar options I had around my pension. And I think in hindsight, for me, I made a mistake. I made the same decision as you, but I think in California, I don't know if it's the same. And I know in California, I don't know if it's the same in Maryland. I lost all the employer contributions. So the only thing I rolled over were my contributions. And I think I was age about 34. Seems like maybe that was what's your age, Justin? How old are you?
34, yeah.
34. So very similar age. But Scott and I have had this discussion, and he's always told me you need to go back to teaching in California for a couple of years. But anyway, I don't know, Scott, if you want to jump in. Those are my questions for Justin. I don't know, Scott, if you want to pick up this conversation.
No, not really. It gets into the weeds. I think you did fine, especially if you rolled it over. I mean, you had a time period where the S&P 500, which is what you were primarily invested in, just probably had its greatest run. So I don't think you did too bad there. The only way you get those employer contributions is if you take it as a pension. So if you do well with the risk, if you take enough risk and you get the returns in the right order, you can end up replacing what you lost in employer contributions. It would have, but if you had intended to come back to teaching for a few years, then it really would have been a bad decision. But I mean, you're not going back to teaching in the classroom, Dan.
Scott, that is a fantastic answer that I guarantee you is helping some of our audience. So I'm glad you did continue this, Scott. Thank you.
I just want to say, go ahead, Justin.
Yeah, I think when I'm evaluating this with clients, the number one thing I ask them is there even a 1% chance that you're going back to teaching? Because if so, leave it, because the clock has to restart, right, for your pension. So let it hang. And then as far as the employer contributions, Dan, I actually don't think you should feel at all different about your decision. And the reason why is because your employer contributions are more or less meaningless even when you start pulling contributions later on, because it's just based on the formula. So it's not what they put in was totally irrelevant and is not in the equation at all, at least not in Maryland. So for me, it's just based on average income. It was based, it's based on longevity, and it's not based on how much is actually in there versus how much the employer put in. That's never yours. So unlike a regular 401k with another company, you wouldn't, it's not like you lost that anyway. You already lost that.
I knew, Scott, I was going to enjoy our conversation today. I feel even better about it now.
Now I need I was hoping for a little downward turn in the market before my large amount of rollover came over, but unfortunately it hit like a few weeks ago at the peak, and then it's been down since. But over the next 30 years, all of it's irrelevant in my opinion. It'll be a rounding error. So
yeah, 100%. Hopefully.
Oh,
I have to say, I admire your energy level and your ability to, I mean, if I had to do 12 meetings in a day, I think I would need like a month to recover. I mean, it would absolutely kill me. I'm like very much on the introvert side, and you know, I love interacting and talking with people, but it also just drains me like to the point where, I mean, I don't even want to talk to my wife when she comes home, which is great because she's got a lot to tell me about her day from school. So it actually kind of works out well. So like I have maximum 3 meetings in a day, but usually 2 would be my max. And, but that's incredible that you're able to do that. I admire that.
thanks. Appreciate that, Scott. It's been fun. I've actually been really blessed to craft my schedule and that I only do that a few days a week.
Yeah.
But I like that. It gives me a little bit more flexibility on Mondays and Fridays.
So I don't schedule any. I try not to schedule meetings on Mondays and Fridays. Those are my prep days and days I work on the business. I'm sure our listeners don't care, so I'll skip over that part. But I do the same thing. It's Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. Those are the days that I meet with clients, unless there's an emergency. So I'll preface our line of questioning here with, you know, I am a financial planner. I'm a certified financial planner. I've been doing this. I have a master's degree in financial planning. I've been doing this for, well, on my own for 26 or 23 years. And when I got into the business, student loans were complex, but they weren't nearly as complex as they have become really over the last 10, 15 years due to all the different programs that have been put into place. And so, I mean, honestly, this is an area of the market that has completely passed me by. I understand enough to be dangerous, and so I don't do the work. I recognize when I have a client or a client's child who has a need, or a new teacher, that I'm gonna bring in an expert, someone who knows what they're doing in this area and has been doing it for a while. And that's why we're talking to you, because a lot of this is a foreign language to me as well. Even though I understand it, I don't understand it at the level that you do. And some of our prior guests do as well. David Gurley's been on. He's fantastic. And I know you and him interface quite often. So Justin, as someone who does this for a living, and like not just financial planning, but today's topic is student loans. And I know we've done student loans as a topic before, but hang with us. There's a reason we're doing this again. What are the most common questions that you are getting these days?
Yeah, I think, Scott, thank you for that introduction, and also just stressing the importance of this for a lot of our teachers out there. We have a lot of deadlines coming up here. And I do offer student loan consults for folks. And over the last year or two, these are the kind of common 10, 15 questions that I get over and over and over again. And so I thought we'd build on your conversation with Dave and be able to kind of jump into those, and then end with some scenarios of like what we typically see and how this stuff is all shaking out. So a few things, the first few questions that I get that are really basic level, I think to start is, I don't know anything right now. I know I have loans. Where do I access my stuff? And I think right off the bat, number one is that if you log into studentaid.gov, let me actually first start by saying, if it's private, then it's going to be in studentaid.gov. Today's conversation is going to be about, if it's public, it's going to be in studentaid.gov. Today's conversation is not going to be focused on private loans. It's going to be focused 100% on public loans, by the way. So the first thing to do is go to studentaid.gov. And from there, you can, if you have never created an account, you'll want to create an account there. And from there, you should be able to access and see your loans. No matter where they are, that will at least show you of what the government has on file for you for loans. Then once you're in there, on the right side of that screen, when you log in, it'll show you who your loan servicer is. And a lot of people are confused by this. This studentaid.gov is a government site from the US Department of Education that houses and shows data about your loans, but it's not who houses them. It doesn't collect payments for you. So the second one there is right on the right. That'll show where your payment provider is. That's who you're going to do most of your work with. For most people out there, this is Nelnet, this is Great Lakes, or most common for teachers, it's Mohila. So that's more question number one, is like, where do I access that? That's the most common place that I see. If you're going for federal loan forgiveness, your loans have to be with Mohila. And so if they're not in with Mohila, they have to be switched over there, and they should automatically be doing that if you've completed any federal loan forgiveness forms. So that's our first question today that I mostly see. Okay.
And are you talking about any type of forgiveness, not just PSLF?
Only PSLF will be there.
Oh, okay. Because there is a separate forgiveness.
Yeah, so there's program. A teacher loan forgiveness or a 20 and 25 year one, which is going to be a future question coming up here. Those could be in any of the providers. It's only federal loan forgiveness. So PSLF, the 10-year, 120 payment one, they will be in Mohila. And if they're not there, somebody didn't get your form and something didn't happen that needs to happen.
So if your loans are with someone else, I mean, I just want to make sure, because my son is about to graduate from college. He's probably going to take a year off and then get his master's and credentials and then go teach. Probably.
Yes.
So are you saying that, and his loans with Nelnet, they were with Great Lakes. Are you saying that if that's his intention, then he needs to have those moved to Mohila? Or
so what's going to happen, Scott,
in that situation?
He can stay where they are right now, but the moment he fills out a federal loan forgiveness form, they're going to automatically be switched to Mohila because they are the experts and handle PSLF. So it's not like you don't qualify for it now, but they will automatically trigger a move over to Mohila the moment you fill that form out.
Got it. So that will happen automatically once you fill out your first form.
Yes.
And what you're trying to do is make sure there's not like stragglers behind that didn't get moved over to Mohila. Is that what you're saying?
Yep, and all of them should be in one place, whether it's Nelnet or Mohila. But again, until you fill out that form, they may not be over there.
Okay, got it. That's good to know.
Yep.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, the next question I get is, what is an income-driven plan versus the standard payment plan? So most people out there, if you own a mortgage or you have a car, you're used to a standard payment plan, which is the amount of money you owe, the interest rate, and the timeline on your loan calculated on what your monthly payment's going to be. So it's based on all those factors. For most people, the moment they graduate, they are automatically placed in a 10-year standard payment plan. Okay. Now, if you want to go and apply for PSLF, you need to be over at an income-driven plan, which is a different way to be able to calculate your payment. It's not based on the size of the loan. It's based on your income from your previous year to your tax return. So there's two different ways to approach this. But if you want to go for federal loan forgiveness, you're going to need to be over on an income-driven plan. If your balance is relatively low and you're going to pay it off, you have the option to switch to an income-driven plan, or you might just want to be in the standard payment plan and knock them out in 10 years or less if you want to go more aggressive on it. So that's the two different strategies of how to pay your public loans off. And sometimes it's right to stay on the standard plan. I mostly see that for teachers who have very low balances, who aren't going to qualify for the 10-year plan anyway, because they're going to have them paid off prior to that. But if you do have a larger balance and you do plan on going for federal loan forgiveness, you're definitely going to move your loans over to an income-driven plan. And that's going to be not based on the size of your loan. If Scott has a $200,000 loan or I have a $50,000 loan, this income-driven plan has no formula that includes that amount. It's based on your income and income only on that one.
Okay. And that's going to be for regular, regardless. I think you're going to get to this, whether it's PSLF or other forms of forgiveness.
Absolutely. If you're going for PSLF or the 20 or 25 year plan for non-educators or nonprofit folks, all of those folks have to be in the 20-25 year plan. Have to be in an income-driven plan. If you're going for regular payment payoff or teacher loan forgiveness, which we'll talk about in a minute, those can be in any of these payment forms, any of these payment plans.
Got it. Okay. And maybe I should save this question for later. So a question we often get from new teachers is because they know about 403Ys, they want to make contributions to their 403B
Yeah.
or their 457 if they have a good 457, is should we do pre-tax or Roth? And
Yeah.
often we'll be like, well, your income is very low at this point in time. You're in a very low tax bracket. You should be doing Roth. However, that answer is incomplete if they have student loans and are going for PSLF.
Yes.
How might they think about that differently?
Can I? And that's actually going to be our final question, which is strategies to
it?
lower payments. Yeah. So would you mind if we just pause? We did that one then, because
We're
that's
going
a
to
great
pause that
question.
one.
I get that all the
Yes.
time. Yeah, we
No
are going
worries.
to get to
Do
that though, because it's important. Yeah. Perfect. Let's move on to the next one. So the next one, what is the difference between all of the payment plan, all of the forgiveness options like PSLF, teacher loan forgiveness, and the 20/25 year IDR plan? So I'm just going to go through those options. Okay. So PSLF, or public student loan forgiveness, is if you work for a nonprofit and you have made 120 payments in that time period that you have worked for a nonprofit. So two things have to match: nonprofit status and a payment had to be made. And if those match accounts for a payment, you need 120 of those. This doesn't have to be consecutive. This can be some in 2009, some in 2015, some in 2022, but they have to match. And we'll talk about what you need to be able to apply in a minute for those, but that's PSLF. 10 years, more or less 120 payments while working for nonprofit. Also, at the end of that, everything's tax-free federal-wise. State by state, most states are also tax-free for the forgiveness on that, but some states do get you are taxed on that. The second option is the teacher loan forgiveness. This is one a lot of people just don't talk about anymore because it hasn't been flashing in the news. But the teacher loan forgiveness plan is if you work in a school that's considered lower income, and you can look online for that, of whether your school qualifies for that, you have to serve 5 years in that school or in a school like that, and you could qualify for either $5,000 or $17,500 of forgiveness. The 5,000 is for, it's not fair the way they do this, I'll be honest, but it's 5,000 is mostly for high need areas. So elementary teachers only qualify for 5,000, for example. Music teachers only qualify for 5,000. Not that your job is not important, and I hate that they have it like that, but that's the rule. The 17,500 are for higher need subject areas, so special education, secondary mathematics, I believe, is on there, secondary science is on there. So I would look to see if that makes sense. So teacher loan forgiveness is again the 5-year plan. You can be on any payment plan you want during that. You don't even need a certain amount of payments. It's only based on 5 years of service, and you just get them signed off from your principal. So the number of payments don't matter there. You need 5 years of service. And then the third and final forgiveness option that you can do.
Wait, before you do that, teacher loan forgiveness is taxable. Is that right?
And federal, it's not. I'm not sure about state.
Okay, so teacher loan forgiveness is not taxable. That's also not taxable. It's
not on the federal. Nope. The next one is.
Okay.
All right.
Okay.
And then the third option, and these are for folks who end up leaving teaching or anybody out there who is not in education. There's a 20/25 year IDR plan. And this is if you're on any of the income driven plans and you've served and you've made 20 or 25 year payments while being on an income driven plan, you can get your loans forgiven at that point. That money right now, after 2025, is slated that it will be taxed on that forgiveness. And this usually only makes sense for somebody who has a lot of loans. So I typically see this for, like, I have a client who's a lawyer and works in it doesn't make the most amount of money because works still in a more of a nonprofit situation. And has their income will produce a low payment for 20-25 years. It's very rare that this mathematically makes sense, but it's usually for middle to lower earners with high student loan balances who are not working for nonprofit. And the 20 or 25 years is based on, there's some rules on which payment plan is 20 versus 25, and also based on whether the loans are from undergraduate or graduate. So those are the 3 forgiveness options that you possibly could tackle. So that was a lot there. I don't know if you guys have any follow-up questions on that kind of clarify that for the audience.
I have at least one. The PSLF, working for a nonprofit or school district, does that have to be full-time, or can it be
Scott, you're on it. That's a great question too. I get that all the time too. And I didn't put that on here. You got to be 30 hours or more. So it can be part, but it's got to be 30 or more. And they ask that right on the PSLF form. And the PSLF form can be done now electronically or by paper on the studentaid.gov site. It actually was new since your conversation with Dave, is now that you can fill out the PSLF form online, click that you sign it online, and you can virtually electronically send your paper over to your employer, and they can sign it electronically now. It's a really nice game changer.
Wow, that is really cool. And the 30-hour requirement is not that doesn't get like pro rata. It doesn't become pro rata. So like you're only working 75%, so you only get 75% credit. You get full credit even though you're not okay. So once you hit 30 hours, wow.
Yep.
So you're working 30 hours, as long as you're working 30 hours, and you make a payment that counts as one of your 120 payments.
Beautiful. Great work. That's exactly correct. Yeah. And then again, the teacher loan forgiveness, no one has been talking about, because all of this other stuff, the PSLF and the COVID pause and all that stuff has been in hiding. But for folks who have lower loan balances who are teachers, typically under like 40 or 50,000, if they're in a high need school district and they have the ability to be able to get 17.5, they might want to go in that direction versus PSLF. It's a big mathematical equation about which is better.
Okay. So here's the next question. Can you somehow split your loans up to do both? Or is there a way to get both?
Good question. During the PSLF waiver that ended last year in October 31st, you were allowed to do some double dipping. But from here on out, once you get the PSLF, once you get teacher loan forgiveness, your clock restarts technically. So you've got to be very intentional about which direction to go into.
Oh,
so it's a big mathematical equation that you need to work on about which is better. Usually larger loan balances, like I don't want to give blanket statements, but usually over $40,000 or $50,000 of loans and you're a teacher, you probably are going to shoot for PSLF. If your loan balance is somewhere between 0 and 30 or 40,000, you might want to look into the teacher loan forgiveness option.
I swear school districts need to hire people like you, Justin, just to work with their employees. This stuff is
it's so complex. What we have so complex
in this country to education is killing me. Yep. Okay, one other question on this. Parent Plus loans are not includable, correct?
Great question. Between now and December 31st, there's an ability, and I'm pretty sure Dave talked about this, to do with something called a double loan consolidation. This is not my wheelhouse. Dave is very good at this. So if you do have Parent Plus loans, I definitely advise you to take action like yesterday. And Dave is definitely the best person. So if you go back a few podcast episodes, he's great with double loan consolidation. I think my strength comes into PSLF versus teacher loan forgiveness. Optimizing your payments and choosing the payments is definitely my cream of the crop.
Got it.
But yes, you can get on an income-driven plan. You can lower your amount, and you can go for PSLF on Parent Plus loans, but you have to take action between now and December 31st to be able to get that moving.
So for the non-teacher forgiveness, this 2025 year IDR forgiveness plans, with the new, well, I think you might be getting into this soon. Maybe this is the next question, but like the payment options now are so much better than they used to be with the new. I see it. I see the word save here. I'm going to save that question. No pun intended. And I'm just going to let you keep moving on.
We'll jump right to that question, Scott.
Okay.
Yeah. So the question is, and I get this probably every day. What's this new save plan about? Should I enroll? It's been all over the news, and I just want to know if I should enroll to save money. So for the majority of people out there, the save plan is going to lower your payment, but this is not a blank statement for everybody. And I'll go through your situations. Basically, the main 3 payment plan options on an income-driven plan is the save, the pay plan, and the ICR plan. The majority of folks out there, if you were automatically, before the new save plan came out, if you were on the repay plan, you will be automatically moved over to the new save plan, and it will automatically happen, and your payment will go down because the formula got more generous in the fact that it will chop your payment slightly down. Now, when it would make sense to switch to pay, to stay where you are if you were on pay, is if right now you have an old payment count that they gave you, an old, payment amount from 2018, 19, 20, when you last had to put in your income verification forms, and your payment is lower. And if your income has gone up and up and up over the last 2 or 3 years, if you were to switch over to Save, it would manually require you to put your new income in, which could automatically shoot your payment up. So it's only going to make sense to switch to Save, specifically like you want to try out both options. And it's usually because they're making you verify your income again, your income might have gone up and it might shoot your payment up. So the majority of people, they're only gone maybe an extra 3 or 4% every year for the past 3 years. Save is probably going to be your best bet. But for folks who were still back in 2019, the last time they applied for this, and you got a big raise from there, maybe you got an admin role, maybe you moved into another executive role at school or something, you might want to consider waiting until they require you to put your new income in and then apply for Save. So Save is going to be great for most people, but not for everybody. It's not a blank statement. You definitely want to, going to want to compare those and whether it makes sense.
Is Save a game changer in terms of making it easier to live with
I think it
massive student loan debt that people are graduating with these days?
I think it is. There's a few things. One, with the interest subsidy on it, which what I mean by that is that let's just say your payment is $300 a month, and right now let's just say let's say your payment's $300 a month, and let's say the interest on the loan is $500 a month. With you making $300 only, typically the old payment plans, the $200 would compound over and over and over again. But now the extra amount, the gap between the interest and what you're paying, if there's anything left over, now is covered by the government. And so it's subsidized. And so it will be nice for people to now be on the income-driven plan and not see their balance grow.
Yeah.
Also, for folks who have multiple dependents at home and who are like 2 teachers, maybe making $50,000 to $80,000 each, the new Save plan could be very generous in lowering your payment substantially so that you can use that money to do bigger and better things. So I do think there is a lot of wonderfulness, the word, to be able to keep payments in check. It does scare me a little bit that a lot of this legislation didn't impact like colleges keeping their tuition in check, because someone really strategic can play some games here. We're not going to go into that today, but that's the only thing that scares me about the Save plan. But for the majority of my clients, it is definitely a game changer. It's not like it's a daunting task anymore of paying loans if you're in the Save plan and you're lower income.
Well, I can tell you this would have been it just would have been amazing for me and my wife. I mean, we graduated with quite a bit of student debt, and well, actually we didn't really graduate with a lot of student debt, but it literally doubled, over the course of maybe the first 15 years as we were starting out, not making a lot of money. I started a business that made very little money for many years, and the student loans are in forbearance, that interest is capitalizing. You end up with you might graduate with $30,000 in student loans, and then a decade later you're at $60,000, $65,000, $70,000 in loans, and you've actually still been making payments a lot of that time. And it just completely changes what you can do with your decisions around everything, whether it's kids, a house, cars. It affects everything. So I feel like this is a really good step in the right direction. It doesn't solve the problems, but it's a good step.
I agree. So I actually, one of the scenarios that I was going to review at the end, let's actually just let this jump in now. Let's say you're a first-year teacher right now, right? At this point in time, you graduated in May, and your grace period, which is the 6-month amount of time after you finish school that you don't have to make payments, is coming up right now. So normally right now, if this was 5 to 10 years ago, they would be coming on and looking at the standard payment plan. It would be $300 or $400 a month. And they're only making $30,000, $40,000 a year as a first-year teacher, or $50,000 as a first-year teacher. That could be super daunting. But right now, if we put in the tax return from last year, there was no or maybe very little income that we're going to just submit in. So we'd be able to apply for Save. There would probably be a $0 a month payment for that person for the next year. So now as a first-year teacher, when they're struggling so much, they can literally get a pause for a year, not make payments, still have these counted for PSLF, right? And the subsidy on that would cover so that a year from now, your loan balance is exactly the same it was today. So that person had now a year of their life to get organized, to get on their foot as a first-year teacher, to be able to start, paying off any other debts they had, building an emergency fund, starting retirement that they would have never had again. Now let's fast forward a year from now. Now they're going to have to recertify their income on the new SAVE plan. If we now go back on this year's tax return, they're only going to have a half a year worth of income. So probably $20,000, $30,000 on their tax return. I put that in the SAVE calculator. Their payment still is probably $0 to $50. Now for year two, again, they're reestablishing themselves still. They're getting life organized. They might be saving for a house. They might be building the emergency fund. Now they're not putting $300 or $400 a month away in their student loans. Now they're paying $50 and another year counted towards PSLF. And your interest all subsidized on that. So when you think about like those 2 or 3 years for a first-year teacher, if they know how to play this game, it's game changing. And so I think the young teachers right now, if they know the rules, there's a lot of planning to be done right now with them.
I think school districts are really missing out on an opportunity here to attract and retain, really good people by offering this as a service. Inevitably, I think what's going to happen is they're going to hire people who are unqualified and there to sell insurance products. But for
because they'll do it for free.
Yeah, because they'll do it for free.
Yeah. And I put air quotes on it for the audience out there.
Yeah, it's not free, people. Yeah. But if you're an employer and you're listening to this is going to help your current employees and future employees, but make a wise decision as to who you're going to work with to do this, if you're going to do it at all. So that is that's just really kind of amazing. One question I have on that is, you have to be out of school in order to be on the SAVE plan. While you're in school, if you don't have a subsidized loan, you actually are still accumulating interest, and
you actually
technically capitalizing.
Absolutely. You want to get yourself out of the grace period and all of that as quick as possible. Some of the loans that you have, whether they're undergraduate, graduate, or grad plus loans, some of them allow, once you graduate, to call and get yourself out of the grace period and immediately start paying on them. And I believe that's only the grad plus loans that you could do that with. So you literally in May 15th, if you graduate, you can call, okay, I want to switch over to this. Your payment will more or less be zero on those because your income will be nothing. And then you can literally subsidize your interest. The problem is most people have undergraduate loans and other subsidized and unsubsidized graduate loans. And those I'm almost positive you got to wait until you graduate and then the 6-month grace period. But the moment that starts, you want to be on it as far as changing things over to the new SAVE plan if it makes sense for you.
It seems like you should, because one thought there is, okay, well, since that interest is capitalizing over that time period, you should maybe pay the interest on it during that time period. But it also sounds like that's probably not a good idea, because that even though that interest is capitalizing during that 6-month period and making the student loan balance bigger, it's not a huge, well, who knows what interest rates will be here soon, but it's not a huge.
It depends the size of the balance too, the loan.
Yeah. I mean, because if you're going for PSLF, it actually may end up being better because that's just going to get forgiven at some point.
Yeah. So Scott, one of the questions I had also, and I get this all the time, is should I pay more on my loans? And this is based on what direction you're going into. Again, student loans, think about 2 directions are you shooting for. Are you shooting for payoff or are you shooting for forgiveness? If you're shooting for payoff, put whatever money you want on it. Knock this thing out. Go for it. Dave Ramsey style. Let's go. Beans and rice and knock this thing out. Sure. But if you're going for any kind of forgiveness, you want to pay as little as possible, always the minimum monthly amounts, and use those dollars for other things. Because you more or less are shooting for forgiveness. You want max amount of forgiveness. So you don't want to be wishy-washy in the middle. We've got to do the math out, pick the direction you want to go into. And if you're going for forgiveness, you want to pay as little as possible, continue to try to bring your monthly payment down and not worry about the size of the loan balance because you're going for forgiveness. So it's 2 very distinct styles of what direction is best. And some of that is like you can look at the amount and say, oh, this is a guaranteed what direction to go into. But for most people, it's a calculation you really need to do about what direction to go into.
Okay. Oh my gosh, this is such great stuff, but it's also so freaking complicated. It's crazy.
Absolutely.
I feel like we're already like overwhelming teachers with 403B stuff because that's made too complicated. But hey, this is what we're here for. We're trying to provide resources, and this is great. Okay, what's the next most common question?
Next question, it's going to be very important between now and December 31st, is should I consolidate my loans? I get this a lot because it's been very scary in the past, and the fact that before the PSLF waiver and this one-time income adjustment, that the one-time count adjustment that's happening right now, if you consolidate your loans, you restart your whole clock towards federal loan forgiveness. Last year and this year, before December 31st, by consolidating your loans, you will be able to not have to restart your clock. And what's special about, like, when would you want to consolidate your loans is always what I get. This is if you have different payment counts. Let's say, Scott, you have undergraduate loans with 50 payments, and you also have undergraduate with 1 payment. Between now and December 31st, consolidating those and reapplying for PSLF takes the largest count balance. After December 31st, if you consolidate, it goes down to 0. You restart. So, like, the number one thing and why we wanted to do this podcast now, and we all talked about this, was you have until December 31st to consolidate your loans and apply for PSLF to be able to get all of the largest payment balance spread out among all your loans. Now, when the negative to consolidating is that it will require you to re-put your new income in. So if you had your income set in from last year or 2018 or 19 and your payment was really low, when you consolidate, you are going to have to force put in your most updated return, and it might jump your payment up. For most people, though, if you are getting an extra 40 or 50 payments all consolidated and counted, it's a slam dunk, and the extra payment cost wouldn't be a big deal. But again, another very individualized, very mathematical computation that needs to be done as far as does that make sense. But this is the number one thing that clients and listeners need to know right now is that should I consolidate? Should I apply for PSLF? Because the deadline is December 31st, and we've got to take action now on that. We do not want to miss that because that could be game changing for people.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, sometimes the graduate loans are more than the undergraduate loans. And like the ability to, oh my God. Yes, the ability to take like when you've got like you've made like 3 payments on it and suddenly you get credited for like 53 payments or whatever. I mean, that's a huge advantage. Wow. Okay.
Scott, I was running around the Baltimore Harbor yesterday, and one of my friends was fishing, and I went past him real quick. And he was like, "Hey, my wife's loans are going to be forgiven in the next week or 2." I was like, "Fantastic! That's great." And then I sat and talked to him for a minute, and I dug a little bit more into it. And he actually said only half of the loans were going to be forgiven. His undergraduate loans, her undergraduate loans, were at 119 payments right now. And the graduate loans were at 43. And so what he was saying was that the undergraduate loans were going to be forgiven, and they were planning on submitting the PSLF form that evening. So somebody was looking out for this guy. I said, "Hey, you got to reach out to me tonight. Hold off on submitting that PSLF form." Sure enough, later that evening, I typed up the whole plan. I was like, "Hey, listen, this is what we need to do. We've got to consolidate these into one. Do not fill out that PSLF form. All of the payments are going to be switched over to 119 payments, all of them. It might take a month or 2 or 3 or 4, but it will all be consolidated. Don't make another monthly payment. Once the consolidation happens and your payment is adjusted, your payment count's adjusted, then reapply for PSLF. He'll have one more payment, and it was $156,000. It was a nurse, all forgiven. Will be forgiven.
Best day of fishing ever.
Oh, for sure. I don't think he caught anything. So I think
he did catch something.
He caught you. He caught Justin.
Oh my God. Yeah. So it's one of those like slam dunk opportunities that we've been seeing. I know Dave talked about seeing over and over and over again.
God, I hope he bought you at least a beer. That is insane.
Yeah. So we're very excited. But how great is that? Now a nurse who's got 2 kids at home, who's planned on having to marry filing separately for the next 5 years, who had to pay a $200 or $300 monthly payment. Now, after 10 years of service as a nurse, taking care of babies, is now going to have her loans forgiven and all in the right direction. And now they're going to save money on taxes moving forward. They don't have this stress now of having to file separately. They don't have to worry about the student loan, filling out these forms anymore, and they're done. It's huge, life-changing.
That's just
pretty cool.
Jaw-dropping. That's amazing.
Yeah. All right. We got about 4 or 5 more questions, and then we'll do a few scenarios, and then I know this is a lot in this episode. You guys everyone out there is hanging in there. All right. Next question. When do I have to start making payments? So For folks that were on the COVID pause from March 2020 all the way until September 31st of 2023, most people were not making payments and no interest was capitalizing during that time because of the COVID pause. In September, interest restarted on your loans, but weirdly, you didn't need to make a payment in September to qualify for PSLF. So it's one of those things where if you are going in the payoff direction, start making payments. Like September was the right decision for you. But if you're not making the payment in September was the right decision, because you will get that counted for PSLF for free without making that payment, just like the other 30 or 40 payments that you probably didn't make during COVID. Then starting in October right now, I'm sure this is going to come out right at the end of October. This does need to happen where your payment needs to be in to count for PSLF, and interest is starting to move right now. So it is important for folks to log into Nelnet or Mohila, make sure they're on the right payment plans, make sure they're getting organized, because October does need to happen for PSLF. However, the Biden administration just last month put out a notice that you could not pay for the next year, and it's called an on-ramp forgiveness period. And during that next year, interest still capitalizes. The PSLF will not count if you don't make payments, but supposedly there's not going to be any delinquency reports going to your credit agency during that next year. So if right now you're still like trying to meet with someone or need to get your student loans in check, like reach out for a consult for somebody, making sure you're organized. It's okay to not make a month or two of payments, but it's not gaining you anything at this point by holding off. Interest is still capitalizing. PSLF does not count for you. So you do have a little bit of a ramp, but if you're going for one of these forgiveness plans, I recommend like get going on this, start making payments and start getting these months to count for you. But it might make sense where if you right now last year filed married filing jointly, for example, and when you put your data in and calculations in and it lowers your payment to be able to switch to married filing separately, you actually might want to hold off until you file your return in February or March and then re-put in your stuff into the system to be able to lower your payment. There's some stuff to do here. And again, I know this is overly complicated. That's why reaching out for someone during this might be really, really valuable for you.
This is crazy. All right. Very good. What's the next one?
All right. A few more. This is also really common for, I know, your listeners, and I know I've been getting a lot of this for any older teachers that have been teaching for more than 12 or 15 years. Most of their loans were on FFEL loans. And Dave talked about this a lot in his episode. FFEL are old loans that never qualified for federal loan forgiveness because they weren't direct loans. Between last year and December 31st, another December 31st deadline, if you were to consolidate those and fill out your PSLF form, it will go back and give you a count adjustment on all of those payments that you made while being on that old bad plan that didn't count for you. If you don't consolidate those and switch them to a direct plan and apply for PSLF before December 31st, though, you will miss on that opportunity. It is gone forever. So another like ding, ding, ding. Two things here. If your payment counts are different, or if you had old FFEL loans that never qualified for PSLF, most people are like, oh, these didn't count. They do right now through December 31st. You've got to consolidate, you got to apply for PSLF, and then you got to be patient as they count those old payments. I'm seeing this all the time where I've got teachers who have been teaching 16 or 20 years who made 150 payments on their loans who think they don't qualify for PSLF. When right now, if we consolidate, switch over, and apply for PSLF, you can get those counted. It is huge for people.
Oh my goodness. God, everybody needs to hear this. It's killing me. All right. We gotta get this. Anybody listening, you gotta send this pod out to all of your teachers. I mean, you got to do it. Go ahead. Go ahead, Justin.
Last two. The next one, should I set up my account on auto payment? So if you right now, your loans are good to go and they're in Mohila or they're in Nelnet and you feel like you're in the best payment structure, sure, go ahead, set them up on auto pay. You can do it right on the website. But if you haven't figured out your whole situation yet, if you don't have the right plan, if you don't think you're most optimized, don't set that up. Go get some research, do some research, schedule a consult, make sure your stuff is in the right plan. And then once it is, then set up auto pay so that these can more or less be on autopilot for you. Okay. All right. And then the last question, which I think you already asked a little bit about before, Scott, and this is, what can I do to lower my student loan payment if I'm on an income-driven plan? This is where a lot of financial planning mixes with student loan stuff. So think about when you apply for these income-driven plans, the amount that you're paying is based on your taxable income. And this is your federal adjusted gross income on your tax return. You're gonna have to put that in. So we've got to think, are there any things we can do to lower that adjusted gross income? And there are many things. So this podcast is probably going to come out right during most of your open enrollments. So during open enrollment, you can put money into an FSA, a dependent care FSA, a health FSA, any deductions that you take for your health insurance. All of that stuff lowers how much you're going to pay on your taxable income. So if you have any kids out there who get daycare, the $5,000 dependent care FSA will be your friend. Use that. That will drop your taxable income by $5,000. If you have any health needs coming up, your kids are getting braces, anything like that, you can contribute a little more than $3,000 into a health FSA. That will also drop your taxable income for next year and will save you some money on your student loan. And then what you guys talk about the most in here, which is more or less your cream of the crop, which is the 403B and 457. If you're making contributions to your 403B or 457 that are pre-tax, that will also lower your taxable income. And teachers can put $22,500 next year, $23,000 if you're under 50 into each one of those plans. So if you're making 80 grand and you stick $23,000 times 2 in those 2 accounts, you can get your payment to be very, very low. So there's a lot of strategy to do there. And just for the math on this, if your income is $70,000, your student loan payment on the new SAVE plan is $310. If you put $10,000 into a pre-tax bucket and it drops to $60,000 as your income, your payment drops from $310 to $227 per month. And then if you go from $60,000 to $50,000, so that's $20,000 of deductions, you go from $310 to $143 a month. And think about what you can do with that savings. You can work on your other goals. You can put it back into your 403B. You can fund your Roth, do all of those things out there. So I think for a lot of people who are going for student loans, the pre-tax option, like we mentioned before, Scott, might be your best option for a little while, and the Roth secondary, but it's very individualized about what makes sense there. That was a lot. Woo.
Ooh, that was a lot. I love that last part. This is why it's so important that people have financial planners who know what they're doing, and not financial salespeople who are just trying to make a buck, getting you into whatever it is that makes them money. Because the details matter, and they can have a dramatic impact on your financial situation. Oh, Dan, what do you think, man?
Well, I think, first of all, this is a good time for Justin to explain how someone can get in touch with him. So, Justin, someone is listening to this. How can they reach out to you?
Yeah, one of my favorite new offerings that I started last year when I knew student loans was such an important thing for folks is some people don't need the full comprehensive financial planning stuff that I do, which includes student loans, by the way. Some people need a student loan project to stand alone. And so I offer one for $450, and you get, for that, you get 2 sessions. You get a planning session, like we go through all the scenarios, we talk about all the options, and then you get a second planning session or meeting where we literally go through and I help you fill out the consolidations, the PSLF forms, and all that. So you leave feeling really good about where you're going and the choices made, so there's no mistakes. There are a lot of other, I think, student loan folks out there that just do the initial analysis and then give you directions. And I found that when I was doing versions of that earlier on, there was just mistakes made. And so now I charge $450, it's flat for 2 sessions, and we just knock this stuff out together. And if there is, like, if I'm looking at your stuff and I don't find that there's a lot to do here, then I wouldn't want to help you. There's a lot of other people who need help. And so, we can make that adjustment together. But for most people, within the 2 hours together, they save that much in their monthly cost. And so it's usually a slam dunk opportunity for folks. And so if there's anybody out there who needs it, my website is Garritt, Garritt, financialsolutions.com. That's Garritt, Garritt, financialsolutions.com. And on there, you can read my services, and you can literally sign up for a student loan consult right on my brand new website. Actually, it's all fancy now.
Ooh, I gotta look that up. Now, one thing, Dan, before I let you go, one thing I want to make sure everybody knows is Justin hasn't paid us any money to come on to this podcast. David Gurley doesn't pay us any money to come on this, but we don't take advertising. We don't invite people on that we don't trust. So I just want everybody to hear that disclosure right there. This was not an advertisement. This is not a sponsored program at all. We just we think this is information you need. You don't have to use Justin. I hope he gets very little sleep over the next 3 months because he's so busy, along with the other people we think are great. But I just want to make sure I said that before you jumped in there, Dan.
You took the words out of my mouth and probably said them a little more eloquently. So yes. I also want to just thank you for your transparency, Justin. You said exactly what it costs, exactly what they can expect. So I appreciate that so much. Oh my gosh, Justin, I cannot tell you how impressed I am with that last 45 minutes of content, the way you describe things, the way you clarify things. I probably said it on the first 2 podcasts. I can tell that you were, and I'm going to just say are, because I feel like we're always teachers, an excellent teacher, sir. So first of all, just very well done.
Thanks, Dan. Appreciate it. And I think I'm so inspired and lit up right now to be able to make sure that teachers utilize this December 31st deadline, because I just know I've seen it over and over and over again now with the dozens and dozens and dozens of people I've worked with, that this could be life-changing. And some people just need to either spend some time or spend a few dollars on getting the help they need and getting in the right place. And before the deadline, we got to make moves now. And so thank you for having me on this really timely episode. I think this is really important to do now.
Well, the other suggestion would be to go fishing in the Baltimore Inner Harbor. Is there a certain spot like
every morning I'm running around there? Absolutely. If you're in the Baltimore area, it's Fells Point. I run there almost every morning.
Oh, I know the area. Love Fells Point.
So to summarize here today, what I thought would be really helpful is for me to be taking the lens of a student, someone who's just looking at their student loans and the process to go through here. So what I would first start with doing is getting into your accounts and then determining the best student loan strategy. Should you go in the payoff direction or should you go in the forgiveness option? And that really is based on math. Usually if you have a lower balance, the payoff structure might make sense, or the teacher loan forgiveness might make sense. If you have a larger balance, typically the forgiveness option will make sense, but you have to do that math out. Number 2, then determine the most cost-efficient plan to pay these off. Should you be in the standard plan, which is not based on income, or should you be in one of the income-driven plans that's based on income? That's the pay plan, the ICR plan, or the new very generous save plan. And again, there's a mathematical equation for all of those. Next step after that, December 31st deadline. Should I consolidate my loans? Ask yourself that. Typically, 2 scenarios where it makes sense to consolidate. If number 1, you have old FFEL loans that never qualified for PSLF that you want to tack onto your PSLF count, you've got to consolidate those by December 31st. And if you have different payment counts across your loan balances, so for example, you have an undergraduate with 50 loans, loan counts, but you have undergraduate with 100, you might want to consolidate those together because it's going to take the largest amount. You have until December 31st, and it takes like a month for the consolidations to happen. So you really have like a month. There's got to be done ASAP if you need to do those. Then applying for PSLF. That you can do right on the studentaid.gov site. And there you can do it using paper version, which is always how it's done. Or there's a new electronic place where you can put your supervisors or your HR person's email in, and it will automatically send to them for them to check off that you worked for them for those time periods. Last 2 things is that I would think about, should I start making payments now? Or would it make sense in any way to delay my payments using the on-ramp forgiveness, forbearance, not forgiveness, maybe until you file your taxes in February or March? Most of the case, I wouldn't suggest that, but there is a few select people out there that your payments may go down in February or March because you filed separately, so you might want to make that change. And then the final thing, are there any things you can do in your financial plan to lower your payment for next year? This might be increasing retirement contributions. This might be increasing your FSA or HSA contributions. So that's more or less the framework of what I would do to approach your student loans. And guys, all I ask is just please take action because the deadlines are coming up and this could be life-changing for you. So good luck, good luck, good luck.
Wow, Justin. Oh my gosh. I cannot thank you enough for what you have just provided. Can you say your website again?
Sure, it's Garritt, Garritt, financialsolutions.com. And then on there, my all the services, student loans being one of them, is on there with transparent fees, all right there, to be able to, and you can book a consult with me right on the website.
His name is Justin Garritt. He's an amazing human being. We feel lucky to know him. And Justin, we can't wait to catch up with you down the road and hear how you have helped so many teachers out there. Thanks again for all you do, Justin.
And Scott, thank you for having me back again. Appreciate all the work you guys do as well, and look forward to coming back for my annual visit next year.
I love it.